our children. Let's be honest, we can only expect so much from barbarians, and we know that, but these people don't even recognize the benefits of imperial Rome. Judea existed for centuries between great empires, and they were the crossroads of conflict, and it seemed like every few years somebody was coming in and conquering them. And then finally Rome came, and we brought peace and order to them. It came at a price, of course. There was some bloodshed when we came to their country. And even as we stay here, the barbarians have to pay taxes for us to be here, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. Because they have peace. They have real peace here. And they have a network of roads. And they have commerce that goes throughout the known world. So they have it pretty darn good. And they still act like children. My name's Pilate, Pontius Pilate. I was appointed here as prefect a few years ago. It was a political appointment, but let's face it, getting appointed to a post out here on the frontier is not exactly a plum assignment. I mean, out here, we're on the frontier of the civilized world. Nobody likes it here. Nobody. Nobody wants to be posted this far away from Rome. But somebody has to be here. From the first day here, from the first day when I got off the boat in Caesarea, and I saw this place, I knew that I had to work with one goal in mind. Get appointed somewhere else. So to start with, I did something that is done in every other Roman province, but they had chosen for some reason not to do here. And when I went to Jerusalem, I had them put up the imperial shields on those fortress walls. Put them up right on Fortress Antonia. That's where my residence is in Jerusalem. And the residents of Jerusalem threw an absolute tantrum. That blowhard, Caiaphas, he came to me and demanded that I take them down at once. He said they were offensive to his people. They were there and they had the emperor's likeness on them. So that meant that they had a graven image which violated one of the commandments. I told him what he could do with his commandments, and I left him up. So Caiaphas and his minions stirred up the crowds, and they touched off some riots. And we put the riots down. Because we value order above everything else. And I left the shields up. So you know what Caiaphas did? He snitched on me. The high priest of the temple in Jerusalem sent a letter to the Emperor Tiberius and told him that I had offended his people by putting up these shields. And I was touching off riots and I was causing trouble. He ran and told on me like a little girl. And he made me look like an idiot. Because the emperor wrote right back, and he wrote to me and he told me that the shields needed to come down. Because everybody knew the people in Judea were very touchy about these things. So I took them down, and ever since that day I have hated Caiaphas. And that was years ago, but it was still fresh in my mind when Caiaphas came to my palace, my residence. He brought me this problem he had. He brought me this man, Jesus, and told me that he was guilty of sedition and that I needed to execute him. If there had been anyone else bringing me this problem, I might have listened to them, but because it was Caiaphas, I wasn't going to jump right into it. I talked to the prisoner. And I soon realized that it was not a matter of sedition as much as it was some kind of petty internal religious squabble that he was trying to get me to settle for him. I wasn't going to add into that. I know how they are about the religion. I'm not that foolish. I was there to enforce the laws of Rome, not to make things easier for Caiaphas, so I told him that. Not in so many words exactly, but I told him that I had found Jesus to be innocent. As far as I was concerned, I was not going to put him to death. And from my talk with him, I knew that Jesus was probably, certainly mad. But who isn't mad in this God-forsaken place? So I told Caiaphas I saw no reason to convict an innocent man, and that I would release him. It wasn't good enough for Caiaphas. He told me that I had to do this. He stood there on the threshold of the fortress, because he wouldn't enter into it, because that was Gentile ground, and he would not do that. But he stood there on the threshold of the gate and yelled at me and told me that this must be done. This man had to die, and he had to die soon. So I saw my chance for revenge against this preening, egocentric fool. I said, no, I'm going to release him. So he was enraged. I was happy. But it didn't end there, because then crowds started to form outside the gate, and they started to get kind of ugly, and they started to push against the gates. And they started to get unruly. It wasn't anything that we couldn't handle. I had a full force of soldiers there, but it would mean another small riot at least. I really didn't need that on my record, so I reconsidered. I went back and I talked to the prisoner, and I still couldn't find any guilt. The conversation was strange. But he said nothing that made me think he was guilty. I told Caiaphas that again. And then the crowd started chanting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" That crowd wanted blood. Knowing they wanted blood, I thought I knew what would please them, so I ordered Jesus to be flogged. And it was a good Roman flogging, too. A couple of strong men who knew what they were doing, using flagella, taking big chunks out of his back and his chest. When Jesus could finally stand again, I had him dragged into front of the crowd in the courtyard and showed them. I said, here's your blood. Now, this man is innocent. There is nothing wrong that he's done. So I'm going to release him. And that's when Caiaphas did it. That's when that little snitch did it again, because he told me that he was going to tell Tiberius. He told me he was going to write Tiberius another letter and tell him that I was not doing my duty when a traitor had been turned over to me. I realized at that moment that my hands were tied. So I gave in. I ordered Jesus to be crucified along with some of the other trash that we had swept off the streets that week. I didn't have a choice. If you weren't there, you don't understand, but I did not have a choice in the matter once he said that. Because my job is to keep order, and to keep order, sometimes you have to do things that don't seem right. The way Caiaphas was pushing for this man to die, I knew that if I didn't do something, it would be bad. And I knew from past experience that he had no problem writing to Tiberius and informing on me. I didn't want to think about what my next post would be if they moved me from this place. So I gave in and I had an innocent man killed. I had him killed because it was going to be more trouble to keep him alive than it was worth. Because just keeping him alive to irritate Caiaphas wasn't enough reason to risk it. I'm not really proud of what I did, but I don't feel guilty about it either. Because I told the crowd when I sentenced him that I was washing my hands of it. This was on them. This was what they wanted. This was what they were forcing me to do, so I had nothing to do with it other than writing the order. I was just the last stop in this man's road to death. But in the end I was okay because, it was just one man. What possible difference could one man make?